guys, Samantha from Samantha Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you a fun watercolour polymer clay dish. So first thing you're going to want is some white polymer clay rolled out on your, it's probably say middle setting, so it's probably about 2mm thick. Now I'm going to be working with souffle today. You can use any brand of clay that you want, it doesn't have to be souffle. But that is what I'm going to be using today, just because I really like the texture and I want the finish of the bowl to be matte, and souffle does that really well. So I'm just trimming away the excess there from the white, and I would recommend starting out with white. Then we're kind of going to go with a sailor's letter theme today, so I've chosen a silk screen that works with that, and then I've chosen a palette of colours that works with that as well. Now keep in mind that you can change this based on the silk screen, and then based on what silk screen you're using, change up your colours. But those are the colours I'm going to be using today. I've also just got a grater, any grater will work. And I'm just going to hold that, and I'm just going to just run the clay, the colours that is, through the grater like so. And you do that with all of your colours. Now what I'd recommend with your colours is not conditioning them. I find that it's easier to grate the colours that way. And then just go through all your colours and vary it across your veneer, like so. Okay, and I'm quite happy with that distribution. Then I'll just take a piece of paper and I'm going to burnish that down to the clay. Like so, and that shouldn't take you more than a moment. The clay will burnish down really easily, and this is just going to give you a nice fun pattern. Okay, there we go, that should do it. And there we go, I'm quite happy with how that looks. Now it's a little bit too strong, it's our pattern with the silk screen is not really going to stand out all that well. So what I like to do now is I like to smear the colours a little bit. However, before I do that, I do want to lift this up off the tile that we're working on, put that to the side and just clean up. Also trim the edges, that helps too. There we go. Then all I'm going to do is just going to take this metal tool, and I'm just going to go over the surface and just kind of drag it around. It doesn't have to be in any particular order, it's just to soften the line between all the pieces. And I'll just continue doing that until I'm pleased with how it looks. Again, you don't have to do this, it really is a matter of personal preference, but I do prefer to do this. The more smudged you want it, the warmer you want the clay to be, so if you really want it to smudge up, then condition your clay before grating it, because that will really get your colours to smudge together, but I don't really want them to smudge too much. And I might even take my finger and do that a little bit afterwards, and that helps out a lot. And there we go, quite happy with that. Last step then is to just go and give this a thorough burnish so that it's nice and flat, and then we can move on to silk screening. Silk screen here. Again, you can use any silk screen you want. I'm just going with the one that fits the pattern and theme that I'm going for. Lay that on top, smooth it down so it's stuck to the clay. The flatter the clay, the easier this will be. If there's any bumps, you might find that the paint kind of oozes through the silk screen, and so it doesn't print as well as you might like it to. Then I'm going to take black acrylic paint, and this is the brand that I'm using. Pop that across the sock. Then give it a firm scrape across. Okay. a end and lift and clean your screen. Okay, and there we go. So what I was going to do was I was going to kind of rip this up, but I really like how it's turned out. So I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm going to stick with it just like this. So then I'm going to take a nice large circle cutter. I'm just going to find round about the midpoint, cut, and remove that. And I'm not too concerned with the edges right this second. What I want to do now is, I don't want it to be a nice uniform shape. I want to take a ball tool and just around the edges, because if you put it right in the middle it's not going to be able to hold anything. But what I want to do is I want to go in and I want to kind of make these holes just around the edges, and it's going to warp it so that it's not perfectly symmetrical, and it's just going to add some interest and carry out the theme of it being ocean themed, old, and just kind of like sunken treasure. This is completely optional, you do not need to do this. I would recommend though, if I was going to say anything, sticking with the ball tool instead of using something like small cutters, because it is going to come out more organic and it's not going to have really sharp edges, so I would recommend doing that. Also, you want to make sure that your base clay, you don't have to worry too much about the colours, but the white, you do need to make sure that it is quite soft, otherwise it's going to rip when you're doing this and it's not going to mould nicely. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Now it's going to be a little bit messy, so I'd advise taking a piece of paper and just giving it a gentle burnish, and this is just to mostly flatten out any fingerprints that you may have introduced by doing that. Okay, then lift that up off the paper, it shouldn't take too much, and I do like to give it a little bit of a stretch just to remove that circular shape a little more and to just widen out the holes a little bit, and do this gently, you don't want to be introducing too many fingerprints. But yeah, I'm just basically stretching out those holes. Okay, give it another little burnish to smooth it out again. Okay, and now we are going to want to put a backing on this, so you could have done that before putting the holes on if you wanted to, but I want to give the back a sand and I need to give the sides a sand, and I might even want to fill in these holes by putting a black backing on and just having them have a backing rather than them being completely, rather than you being able to have them. I want them to have a backing on them rather than you being able to put anything through them. Sorry, I couldn't find the words for that. Yeah, so that's why I haven't put a backing on right at this moment. So now you want to bring over a bowl that you're going to use as a form. Okay, and this one should do. Any form that you want will work. It doesn't even necessarily have to be round. You can try out square forms. It will create a different shape each time. Press that down, make sure that it is pretty much centered. You want all these pieces to be sitting flat, so just run your finger over and make sure that they are connected with the bowl. Okay, and then I want you to bake that for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature. Okay, and here it is out of the oven. So I gave it a quick run over with some sandpaper just along the edges to get rid of any sharp bits. It really takes like a minute at most, and you can also run along the back over here if you want to get rid of any bitty bits, but in general you don't need to sand all that much. Then you want to grab some black souffle that has been rolled out on the thickest setting of your pasta machine, and let's see, I'm just going to drape that. Actually, before I do that, I want to quickly give it a texture, because it'll be easier to do that now. and then touch up later than it will be to just give it completely now. And I'm just using a sponge for this. You can use a piece of sandpaper as well, that works quite well. Okay, there we go. Just a quick, easy texture. Then drape that over your clay. And you can actually use your sponge to press that onto your bowl. Like so. Okay, and this will give you a rough outline that you can trim along. Just to get it started so that you don't have to deal with a whole bunch of excess clay. There we go, that should do. Remove that and we'll now lift this up. And you can see we have more than enough excess to work with. So then I would advise pinching along these sides like so. This will join it up to the edges and it will bond it, and it will also thin it out so that when we cut it, it's got a bit more of a beveled finish rather than a rather jagged finish. Okay, there we go. Bring over your knife, and generally it's best to find the thinnest point. Then carefully go around the edges like so. And you don't have to be perfectly precise, just trim around the outside. And now while you're doing this, you are going to be getting fingerprints in the clay. There's no way to avoid that, and you are going to be kind of messing up your texture a little bit, which is fine because we've used a piece of sponge and you can also use sandpaper. Both of those are very repeatable textures, so if you need to do a touch-up later on, it's not a big deal, and that's why I chose those as textures. Okay, remove that, and then you want to go back around and you want to pinch it like so. Okay, then when you've done that, just rotate it over and just go in and do your touch-ups. And I'd advise pinching along the edges with your sponge as well to get rid of all those fingerprints that you will have introduced. And this will just kind of give the back a nice general finished off appearance. Okay, then I'm just going to put that to the side for the moment, and you can leave it the way it is, but I kind of want to put a feet on, but I want it to kind of still match the theme. So I'm going to be using the rest of my souffle black along with this little starfish mold, and I'm going to make that our base. This is not necessary, you can just pop on little feet. If you've seen any of my other bowl-dish tutorials on YouTube, I've shown a few different ways of creating bases, so don't feel like you need to use this one, but it's a nice thematic way to create a base. So now I'm just using the clay to just piece it in because I don't want to overfill it. That will be too much actually, don't overfill it. There we go. Okay, then spend a little bit of time smushing that all in, picking out all the details of your mold. Bear in mind that any mold you want will work. Just test it out and see if it will work as a base. I've chosen this one because it should sit nice and flat and will work as a base. Not all molds are going to work, but I'm saying you can use any theme that you want. Like a flower might be a nice one to work with. Okay, and that should work well. If you've overfilled it a little bit, shave off the excess. But if it's all good like it is here, grab the texture that you used for the back of your bowl and make sure to texture your piece while it is in the mold still, like so. Then I'm going to bring this over and that should work. I'm just making sure that it is centered. and I'm going to press down. And the reason for this is I want to make an indent in the mould and my backing so that they stick together and so that it looks nice. So there, I'll show you. Should look like that. And I'm doing this while the starfish is still in the mould so that it doesn't lose any detail. Okay, and I am pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to see if I can demold it. If you can't, my mold can be baked, so you can just bake it if you wanted to, but you should be able to demold it like so. Okay. And then I'll curl those little feet around like so, and if I set that down, that should sit nicely, and then you've got that on the back. Then as a last little touch, just go in and fix any areas that may not have as much texture as you would like, and then put it into the oven for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature, and you'll basically be done. Okay, and here it is out of the oven. So that's pretty much it. There's not really anything else that I want to do with it. If you wanted to give it a gloss varnish, you could always, if you wanted to give it a glossy finish, you could always coat it with a gloss varnish like Varathane. If you wanted the starfish to stand out, you could always antique that with some white paint if you wanted to, but I'm quite happy with how it turned out. So bear in mind that you can use any shape of cutter you want. You don't have to do holes if you don't want to. You can use any colours you want, any silk screen you want, also any base you want. So there are lots of different ways to alter today's project. So don't feel like you need to use the exact supplies that I showed. And if you enjoyed it, please do let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment that is posted, even if I don't reply to all of them. Just be assured that I do read every single one of them. And if you would like to support the channel, please do consider either purchasing some of the tools and supplies I have on my Etsy store, or even becoming a member of the channel or my Patreon membership. That is greatly appreciated. And as always, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.